Hey, welcome back again, YouTube Wanderers. This is episode number 4 of the Adepticon 2017 Adventures. I am now in the hotel room in Schaumburg, the lovely Renaissance with our Art Nouveau artwork going on in the background. Convention Center is a huge operation, and I think I understand for the first time, although this is the first time I've been here, this is also the first time that Adepticon has had the whole place to themselves. And it's a massive space. Like, there's every game in the world going on here. Perhaps on another video we'll do a little bit of a wander around and try to give you a bit of a scope. But the reason for this and the primary focus is I sat in on Wednesday night a presentation by the Games Workshop folks about things upcoming for them. Now, the general gist of things is they wanted to talk about Warhammer community, and they really were very candid and open about the fact that they have changed their ways in community engagement in the last 18 months. Since a new CEO came into place, the attitude has really changed. And the attitudes of the guys who are doing the presentations have really changed. So they've come out to Adepticon for the first time in, I don't know how long, to have a full force representation. So let me go over a couple things that they discussed in there. First of all, they talked about their community website. And they talked about the fact that they want to engage that further. For those that are involved in the games directly, one of the things that caught the most interest and that piqued the most interest of people is that they would open up a forum finally again, which they haven't done for a long time because it was just a downward spiral of negativity, which unfortunately a lot of forums are. So if you're one of those people that spends lots of times on forums, if Games Workshop opens this up, please don't use it as a spam to complain about prices or or whatever else that you want to bitch about. Use it as a place that they intended to, and that's to enrich the rest of the gamers around there. So the angle that they use as a very specific example was if you have a rules question, you put it up on the forum. If it's not an immediate answer that is categorically the answer, then a discussion ensues. And the way that he described this is he says that out of the replies that you get about suggestions for how to resolve that rule or that odd situation, there will be an opportunity for you to upvote or downvote the particular thing. And the Games Workshop development guys will then monitor that after a while, and if it becomes consensus that the larger part of the community wants it to be resolved this way rather than that way, then they'll actually put it into effect. And if that follows through, that's wonderful, because that's what those things should be meant to do. So once this comes up, and I don't know how long down the road this is, I would encourage you forum users to keep it in the spirit of what it's for and use it for that. They also talked about AOS from the format of an app that a fellow named Tony Pacheco had developed. And he did this on his own time, but some of you might be familiar with it, the War Scroll Builder app. So they have gotten in conjunction with Tony, and they're going to make that universally available through that community website now. So good on to Tony for creating it, and good on Games Workshop for recognizing a job well done and taking it on so it can be used for the greater populace, because there's a bunch of people that I'm sure not even aware of that. So that's a real positive. Second thing they talked about, of course, they had to address some 40K. And they are moving towards a new edition. That's true. We didn't talk about dates, so that's not nailed down. But what they did talk about is a couple of pretty vital changes to 40K. I'm a guy who hasn't played in a few years, but I'm still aware of it. And 40K hasn't had a movement stat for ages. They've had just like fixed movement for guys on two legs, things with wheels, and that's it. So they're going to bring a movement stat back into it. So you'll have a variable distance between how far a Space Marine can move versus how far a Tyranid Hormigaunt can move, and that. So that's important. They also indicated that in the shooting phase, they're going to bring back armor modifiers. So this we're used to from playing Fantasy. There was strength modifiers to armor. I guess sort of Age of Sigmar has that in the form of the Rend stat, but here they're going to have some equivalent for their shooting guns, so that every gun is useful, is the way that they described it. They talked about a couple of other things that weren't really relative to me. because I haven't played in so long, but something about force organization and trying to get continuity in your armies so that you get rewards for doing so. I don't know if this means that it's like rewarding you for being thematic like a battalion does in Age of Sigmar, or how that's going to fashion itself. But I suppose it probably means that if you're going to play all Blood Angels and not incorporate Eldar or Tau with your army, then your Blood Angels get some kind of boost. That's a guess, but that's sort of my takeaway from that. But the other thing that is the big feature that caught my attention the most is about the Warhammer Underworld's Shadespire, which we had hinted to us over the last couple of weeks. Well, we actually got an opportunity to play that game on this presentation night. So I'm going to show you some snapshots and pictures and talk through that right now. And then after that, I'll leave you with that piece, and we'll tail off and rejoin you again for another Adepticon adventure later on. So stay tuned. Here we go. So this was the big reveal, Warhammer Underworld's Shadespire. And they showed this off to us with great glory. Talked a little bit about, before we went over to get the opportunity to play, about how this game is to be their launch into competitive wargaming. Sort of the quick take is a la Friday Night Magic and things like that. So here's an overlook of the game board. They took us into a different room so we could actually get to play it, and showed us through the action. The way that it's designed is you have small little warbands of fellas. In this case, it's Stormcast versus the Bloodbound. They tell us that there's going to be, upon release, 4 different factions, although they didn't tell us what the other 2 were. But you can see the game elements here of cards and little tokens, the models. There's objectives that get put onto the battlefield, like you see that one with all the number 1s surrounded it there on the side of the screen. The models themselves are 3 to 4 parts, with all sort of pegs to plug in and build easily. You wouldn't necessarily need to glue these things. They do come in a gray plastic, even though they're spray painted to be one color or the other here. Of course, hobbyists like you and I will go through and paint them all, I'm sure. But for those that aren't interested, you could just throw them out of the box like this and get to business. Important feature, and the reason I took 2 snapshots of this, is our first view at a female Stormcast warrior. And that's a pretty exciting thing, I think, for them to branch out into that. I know some guys like lady miniatures, and here you go. So the game is designed to resolve things using your stat cards, and then dice rolls, of course, to interact and do combat. There's a few different results that you can see there. The hammers are good for the for most. You have a crossed axe that are good for the corn guys. The black dice are for defending yourself while you're either dodge or throw up your shield. And those other sort of sun patterns are if you have support, then there's a chance that you can get some extra attacking or defensive bonuses. The cards themselves, we sort of scan over here very quickly. The top line in the black space is your range of your attack. It describes your attack, but the numbers on the bottom are the 3 for the hexes that you can move, the number of dice you roll when you're defending yourself, 1, and then the 4 for the number of wounds that you can take. These do have an opportunity to get inspired, and they flip over, which is sort of a cool mechanic in itself. After you achieve a certain objective, then you flip over, you become inspired, and you become a bit better. Again, the board game itself is, and the way the game is set up, is when you play a match, you're to play the best of 3. And the games themselves are a very quick 3 turns, and the cards is what you use to get your objectives. And I'm afraid I didn't get a chance to take a snapshot of those to give you some examples, but it might be hold objective number 2 is the random card you flip up. Further on to that, the design of the game is such that you can, and we didn't talk about this in great deal, but the idea is that you can customize your deck, so you might stack in your favor the kinds of objectives that you like to achieve to better suit you, and that's fine. The other set of the deck is upgrades and combat effects, which you can play during your turn to sort of say, roll 1 extra attack dice on your next activation, or always be pretend that you're being supported on the next attack that goes against you, and things like this. Anyway, the overall take of Shadespire is that it's going to be a fairly exciting, quick, and fast-paced thing where you have elements of models and dice and cards that are all blended together. And I find that pretty unique, that it combines all those things in the same place in the fashion that they've done here. As far as the future of the competitiveness of this, well, that'll depend on how many people get involved and how many shops and venues get on board for hosting these things. So there you go. That's my take on the initial glance at Shadespire, and of course we'll learn more over the months to come.